I'm Ross Victory, and this is Embracing All of Me. What does embracing all of me mean?
It's scary embracing all of you.
Bullies can smell shame from a mile away. For many people of color, it is almost impossible.
The vision of me you created in your mind is not my responsibility.
We're still those children that were like wanting to be accepted.
Research who you are and embrace that.
I sort of forget that everybody isn't bisexual.
We need healthy visibility.
You get to choose who you welcome in.
Not everyone has earned the right to hear your truth. Protect it, cherish it, nourish it.
People know me as bi-Latino top, okay? People normally whisper.
It's like, no, we're sexual time, people. Do you have any questions? Anything that I can help you with?
And that's on that, everyone.
That's on that.
And that is on that. Before we step in today's episode, I want to offer just a small moment of grounding. This conversation with Stevie Luna Ibarra is one of those rare episodes that can hold you with both precision and softness. Today we're talking about grief, but in a way that isn't clinical, it's not performative or rooted in fear. Instead, it's about understanding how grief and loss lives in our body, how it shapes queer people of color during the holidays, and how we can create our own rituals for safety and connection. You'll hear Stevie break down the nervous system in a way that feels accessible and human, explain the role of death doulas, and name the cultural silences that so many of us grow up inside. So whether you're listening from your car, your kitchen, your walk, or your bed, take a breath and let this be a soft place to land. Let's get into it with Stevie Luna Ibarra. Welcome back to Embracing All of Me. Today we're talking grief. As you know, we don't do trauma theater here, but grief is something that lingers, the kind that surprises us and creeps up in those moments where we least expect it. And today we're going to be talking about how grief shapes queer people of color in ways culture doesn't always give us language for. And to help us with that conversation is Stevie Luna Ibarra. Stevie Luna Ibarra uses they, she pronouns and is a queer second-generation Mexican and Filipino American based in Long Beach, California. She is the self-described jack of all trades and a master of social work with over 13 years working in social services and mental health. Stevie is the program manager with Pause, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting people of color through grief and end of life with safe, culturally sensitive, and expert-informed resources. They are passionate about providing heart-centered support through their roles as an associate psychotherapist and is the co-host of the tarot and astrology podcast, Bleeding Hearts Club. Please welcome Stevie to the Embracing All of Me universe. Stevie, welcome.
Wow. Thank you so much, Rose. I'm so excited to be here and engage in this conversation with you today.
Hearing your bio read back to you, what comes up for you? What are some moments that kind of pop out?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about like, whoa, this is so wild hearing it. I know like these are the things that I do, but I think it really brings me back into focus of like, wow, I'm doing this work. Like I'm in it. 13 years, that's almost half my life. And
Right.
It's been a wild journey, but it's also been really exciting.
Yeah, you are definitely outside and you're definitely doing it. And so when you think about your identities, queer, Mexican, Filipino American, what threads feel the most present in your work today?
It feels so intertwined. I really feel like my identity as a queer person, as a non-binary person, it's so integrated with coming back home to my Mexican and Filipino identities because I'm a child of immigrants, but we have the same colonizer, Spain. And so there's like a lot of things on both sides that got lost with colonization, with Catholicism, and all of these things. In my journey of like reconnecting to my traditional indigenous identities or indigenous practices, I have uncovered what queerness and what being non-binary means to me because on both ends, a gender binary was imposed onto indigenous Mexicans and Filipinos. Like we have many genders and in so many different parts of these countries. And it was lost in so much of the assimilation, forced, all of it. And I think I am non-binary because I'm Mexican and Filipino. And yeah, I think it's just been a really beautiful, intriguing homecoming.
When you were growing up with the background that you just shared, was grief ever talked about in your home growing up? And if it wasn't, what filled the silence? Or what were your parents' relationship with kind of grief and loss?
It was not talked about. It's I remember when I was maybe in the 3rd grade, my uncle passed away very suddenly,
Mhm.
and I don't even fully remember being told what was going on, just that my uncle passed away, and I remember the adults running around, getting things in order, talking amongst themselves, and me and my little cousins all like, in the staircase, just, like, talking to each other and holding space for each other, and just kind of processing, like, "Well, what does this mean?" And, like, "How am I feeling?" And crying with each other. There was such a big divide in who was making sense of what, who was holding space for what, and so even though we didn't talk about grief and we didn't talk about death, we were left to make sense of it on our own. But something that I appreciate about my family is that I was exposed to being in funeral homes at a young age and
Mm.
going to viewings and going to the funerals and visiting the cemeteries. And even though it wasn't talked about, I think just the practice of it. And like even with funerals, we go to the funerals and then we go to a buffet after. And
Right.
then for Filipinos, we go somewhere else before we go home so we don't take any like spiritual energy with us.
Okay.
So even if it wasn't blatantly explained, it was a practice and just something that I had to make sense of.
Thank you for sharing that. I can relate to that. Sometimes those losses happening when we're little, and then, yeah, there's not really any clear language about what's going on and things are happening around you. And I wonder if that's a shared experience. Do you see any kind of patterns around how people address loss, transition, and all of that? Because you mentioned colonization. Have you noticed any patterns in your work?
I think one of the main patterns I've seen, at least living in the US,
Hmm.
working with a lot of folks who are also children of immigrants, there's a weird cultural congruence, incongruence thing that's happening. On one end, we live in such a death phobic society, and a lot of our elders, even if culturally, like, there are practices and like that is death positive, or, there are, it's not as phobic, I guess. There's a really big avoidance of talking about death, either because we don't want to bring in death or we don't want to think about our mortality or we don't want things in place. And I'm going to say, like, from our elders, a lot of the elders in general, when I hear people talk, like their parents, their grandparents, like they don't want to think about it, they don't want to plan for it. And then it's on the shoulders of the younger generation to get left earthside to make sense of it on their own, to deal with the paperwork and caregiving and all of that stuff, and then grieve. But then they get so inundated with all of the big things. Like it's almost like you have to go business as usual while trying to grieve. I feel like there's so much avoidance around it, it becomes an even greater undertaking to even think about.
Yeah, there are a lot of administrative processes around when someone dies.
Mhm.
Yeah. Could we call that a skills gap? Because what you're saying too, it sounds like there's a cultural gap, but is there also like a misconception about like what
Mhm.
grief dying is and what that entails?
I don't know if it's necessarily skills, but maybe education. Like, there's a lot of things that folks don't think about or know about until they're in it. Like,
Right.
until, and, like people are dying at different rates. Like, maybe they got a diagnosis and they have months, if not years, to kind of prepare if they do, or it's really sudden. But it's like almost if It's not until you're in it and you have to deal with it and you have to figure it out, or you're left with all of these things.
Yeah.
Maybe if you knew ahead of time about advanced directives or, living wills or estate planning, anything like that, or even like thinking about what we want our celebrations of life to be. If we want to be cremated, buried, aquamated, anything like that, like what we want, I think there's just not a lot of spaces for us to really confront it or even dream about it. Dream is maybe a strange word, but like,
Yeah, I can.
envisioning what deaths we want for ourselves, or having these conversations is just so taboo.
It's sad, and sometimes I get it because as you were speaking, my dad, I remember we had a whole conversation about this is what he wants his program to look like. This is what he wants the bio to look like. At the time, I was not equipped, right, to even be in that space because he had accepted that he was passing, but he's telling someone who's going to be here, oh, this is how I want it to be. And I'm still stuck in oh my God, you're not going to be here. And like, you're telling me how you want it to be. So maybe it's also grief support too, is kind of what you do too, helping people, facilitating those types of conversations for people.
Mhm. My work as like somebody who works in mental health or somebody who supports folks with grief is really like processing what grief feels like, whether it's anger or sadness or confusion or anything like that. But there are people like grief coaches or grief educators or like death doulas, depending on the kind of death doula, like that can help facilitate these conversations or help you make sense of the conversations that you're having, or even, I guess, name what a dying person wants if it feels too hard to have those conversations with their loved ones.
Yeah. And for people who don't know, what is a death doula?
A death doula can be so many different things, but a death doula is someone who gets trained in different aspects of the death, dying, and grief experience. And they can provide any non-medical support for a dying person, their family, or someone who's experiencing grief. So they can help you do paperwork, whether like a dying person is doing paperwork or maybe like the admin tasks for the family that's earthside. They can support with, I think, like advocacy with your doctors or with your care team. They can work with the hospice social workers or, hospice care team in general.
Mm.
They can help you have conversations with your family about whatever kinds of difficult conversations or conversations need to be had. They can help you envision what you want your celebration of life to look like, what you want your legacy to be like. If you want to work on any projects, if you want to do anything, create any rituals. Like they can do so much like spiritual support, admin support. They can help you clean your home, work
Okay.
on like finance stuff. It really depends. It's so expansive.
So you could find someone who is maybe talented or good in a certain type of area and use them. Really thinking about it holistically, right? What does the team look like? What is some of the support that I need look like? And so something else I wanted to ask you is about the holidays and the emotional triggers and all these griefs that we carry. And so I want to know your opinion. Why do you think the holidays activate grief so intensely for queer people?
Oh my goodness.
No.
I don't even now know how to put this into words because it's so bio, psycho, social, spiritual. Like there's so many different things. But I think the holidays in general, let me see if I can like put these thoughts together.
Yeah, take your time.
It has a really interesting way of activating or enhancing the wounds that we already have, whether it's with our family, like if we have been disowned by our family or ostracized by our family, or if we have really complicated dynamics with them, like those are big losses. Or if our family, like maybe someone has passed away, like all of these things in general, because there's such a big emphasis on being with family, being with loved ones, being happy and cheerful, buying stuff, sharing meals,
Oh, yeah. No.
all of these things, like interpersonally, when it comes to like our families, our friends, maybe it's really highlighting the fact that like our social circle or our family relationships aren't what we wish they could be, but they also really tap into this like consumerist things where maybe I can't afford gifts and maybe I can't afford going home or like it's like the basic needs and I think maybe the structural components of it because queer folks are at a much higher rate of experiencing basic needs than maybe cis folks or hetero folks. So it's just so big, I guess.
Yeah, it's so everywhere. It's embedded in every part of the society, financially, emotionally, socially, like you said. And it's like sometimes I wonder if sometimes when you find a thread of happiness, if there's even some guilt around like, hey, things are working out, or hey, I'm further along than I thought I would be, or maybe, it's like a mix of a lot of different stuff.
Like, what did you have to leave behind or give up in order to have this happiness or build this life that you wanted?
And who did you have to let go even to do that? Because I know Friendsgiving, are you a Friendsgiving type of person?
Yes and no. If there's food and friends, I'll go.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've noticed that Friendsgiving seemed to be popular in like the people in kind of like the circle that I orbit. Seems like Friendsgivings are popular, when people can't go home or are estranged from family and that type of thing. And I heard from another guest that I interviewed that actually queer people are awesome caregivers. Have you heard anything about that or like experienced that?
I have definitely experienced, and I feel like my mind goes in so many different ways. Like, I used to work at the LGBTQ center in Long Beach, and
Okay.
I worked with older adults. And one of the things that I really loved about that was that I got to hear a lot about queer history.
Hmm.
One of the biggest things I learned about was that during, the AIDS pandemic, yeah, like during the AIDS crisis, basically, so many folks were dying. I heard that the lesbians were the ones who were caring for queer and trans folks, gay folks, and like, because that's just what you did, because nobody else wanted really anything to do with gay men, trans women, sex workers, like anybody like that. So it was really our community coming together, caring for the dying, being death doulas, being the nurses, being the people who were there when maybe no one else was. And so that's where my mind goes in terms of like really great caregivers, because it was such an intense, awful experience, but they really showed up for each other. And in terms of me experiencing that, I'm really lucky to have a beautiful community of queer and trans folks, and we really do take care of each other. It's like a little village that we have, and we just make each other soup and go on walks together and watch each other's cats and really hold space in a really beautiful way that maybe we don't get to practice with our biological family or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like you did really important work at the LGBT Center in Long Beach. What led you to pause?
Yeah, great question. So I was working as a macro social worker. So I was doing some like data research, like systems level stuff. And
Mhm.
at that point, I was already really starting to burn out because my sister died. Like as soon as I started like a government job that I had, and I was really excited for, a month later, my sister died very suddenly, unexpected. She was only 37, and it was a huge loss. It turned my life upside down and uncovered a lot of family secrets that just changed me.
Yeah.
And grief already messes with your brain. And at that time, I was burnt out. I was experiencing grief. And I was also navigating different diagnoses for my own mental health. It was like a perfect storm of things that fully led me to burning out, but it also kind of led me on a spiritual path that I was already on, but it kind of amplified it. And I felt really compelled to pursue training to be a death doula or death worker. I was really lucky and I did my training with Going with Grace. And after I finished it, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. It didn't feel necessarily resonant to be someone who like sat bedside and did, I guess traditionally what you would think a death doula would do. But I was drawn to death and grief work as a whole. And one day I was looking for jobs because I was burning out and I needed something different. And I found Pause, and it felt like really serendipitous to look through that website and see everything that I think aligned so beautifully with my values, my goals, what I wanted in like death work in general. And that's how I landed here. And I've been with Pause for 2 years, and it's been such a nourishing, rewarding, lively experience
Yeah.
and a really wonderful way to be in the end of life ecosystem.
It sounds like you were searching, and at this, not only did you find something, but you found a way to serve too.
Mhm.
And have you seen any misconceptions about what people think about healing and the grieving process? What I mean by that is, going through my own experience, I was really surprised that grief had such a physical impact. When my dad died, I felt, because it was like, okay, mentally, I understood, okay, there was a death event, but it's like my body felt like it had been hit by a semi truck for a period of time.
Mm.
Are there any misconceptions that you've noticed about the healing process and grieving process?
I think about the people around us when we are experiencing a loss or in a period of grief. Well, grief is forever. We don't really stop grieving because grief, it can be so many different ways. And maybe that's a misconception that grief is this like I'm in shambles, I'm crying inconsolable, like I am just a mess or something like that. But grief can be so beautiful because I think it lives wherever love exists. We're grieving because we loved someone or something so deeply, and the loss of it is altering. And grief isn't just crying and being sad. Grief is, I think, renewal, learning how to open ourselves again to connection and vulnerability and love and joy. Like I can grieve my sister in a way that also brings me joy because I know that's something that she would want me to experience. Yeah, it's so encompassing. But when we think about grieving people, I think a lot of people don't know how to interact with that or hold space for it. So they kind of send a text message or maybe they send some food. But after a while, and honestly, sometimes a short while, people kind of don't talk about it anymore. It's that,
Goes quiet.
yeah, that death phobic like culture coming back in. But we need connection the most. Sure, we need to be alone, but there's no timeline for it. And it's not just one kind of experience. Like it can be so beautiful and powerful and empowering.
So they didn't forget, people know, or maybe they just stop asking, and I guess it's business as usual. I have noticed that. And I've told people too, hey, at some point in the future, when they stop asking, at some point they may stop asking. That doesn't mean they don't care or love you. I think it was actually with my mom, because my grandma died actually after my dad had died. So that was my mom's first like parental type of loss. And I told her, I was like, hey, this is kind of how it went for me. And at some point, grandma's going to be popping up and people will stop asking about it. What would you recommend checking in with someone who experienced a loss?
That's a good question. I think any opportunity to just let them know that you're thinking of them and offering options to show up for them.
Okay.
And also offering space for silence. Like you could text someone and say like, "Hey, I'm thinking about you, XYZ." You might not hear from them for weeks, months, who knows, because they're in their own process. You have no idea what internally or like socially they might be experiencing and have capacity for. So even if they don't respond to you, I think I would just suggest to not take it personally, but you can also try again. Let them know that you're still thinking about them. Let them know that maybe they have options. Because if you say something like, "Let me know if you need anything,"
Right.
they probably don't know. Like they probably can't even access that kind of part of their brain. So if you give them options like, "I can make you a meal," or "I can buy DoorDash you a meal," or "I can help you walk your dog," or "do your laundry, wash your dishes." Things like that, I think can be so helpful. Even if they don't accept it, the fact that you're offering something, letting them know that they can access that sometime may be really helpful because a lot of things fall to the wayside. It's really hard to keep up with the day-to-day tasks. Or even
Yeah.
just, yeah, like being able to sit in silence or remembering anniversaries, birthdays, death anniversaries, anything like that. Just letting them know that you're there, I think.
Yeah. And I love that you said sitting in silence. It seems like sometimes people just want a witness or
Mm.
someone to be present with them. Wow. And in your work as a psychotherapist, and you kind of already shared when your sister passed, what are the signs of a nervous system that is being overwhelmed and not just sad or depressed?
I'm going to try to explain the window of tolerance.
Okay, we're here for a window of tolerance.
The
We're
window of
taking
tolerance.
notes.
Okay. So basically, if we're thinking about our nervous system, there are like three sections of it, three levels to it. Basically, in the middle, there's something called the window of tolerance. Some people call it the window of capacity. And that kind of holds a regulated fluctuation of our emotions. Maybe we're feeling grounded and good. Maybe we're feeling a little stressed. But for the most part, it's manageable. We can think pretty clearly. We can move in a value based way, or at least a grounded, conscious way. And people's windows, they can be expansive, they can be narrow, it can shift and change all the time. And then above it is something called hyper arousal. And that is maybe when you're feeling like fight or flight. Like, I'm really anxious. I can't sleep. I feel like I have to move. I feel like my spirit wants to jump out of my body. It's like you are above your window of tolerance and it's really fast. And maybe you have racing thoughts. And then below the window of tolerance is when you're kind of moving at a slower pace. Maybe it's hard to get out of bed, hard to text back people. The motivation just like feels like too much. Like the executive dysfunction is there. Like I I can't keep up with my job or my household tasks or my social tasks. It's really kind of slow, maybe isolate. What is it? Isolating?
Isolating.
Isolating. And you can really go in either direction you can go. And it's a journey. Like it can you can go anywhere. It's so fluctuating. But I think the way I think about grief, honestly, if you're I guess like too heightened or too like low energy, I think that's when there's some dysregulation. The hope and intention is that we can stay in the window of tolerance because I think we get to be ourselves. Like we are a present, grounded part of ourselves. But when you're in hyperarousal or hypoarousal, I think that's when it's really hard to just be. Like those are some really intense, heavy feelings that we're experiencing. And when you're experiencing grief or a loss, then you could stay up in those states for a really long time without much relief in the middle, if that makes sense.
And I wonder, because to stay in that window of tolerance, I wonder, is there any rituals that you suggest, or maybe that are from your background, as to how people have, tried to stay in that window of tolerance?
And just noticing, like, if I'm up here above the window of tolerance in the hyper arousal state, okay, what do I need? Maybe I need some grounding. Maybe I need some deep breathing. Maybe I need to go to the ocean to just like let the waves, like the sound of the waves, looking at the ocean, looking at nature, like just kind of hold me in that way. And so, like, the hope is to kind of come down a little bit. And then when you're hypoarousal, like isolating yourself, feeling really depressed, feeling low, doing something to kind of elevate you as much as you can. And maybe that is, again, I love the ocean. My whole background is the ocean. This is where I used to go in college.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so, so beautiful. But I think it's just a matter of checking in with yourself. Like, okay, I'm recognizing that this is what I'm feeling. I'm going to allow it to happen because it's normal. Grief makes us do things. And I think a lot of people don't allow it to just be. So give yourself the permission to grieve the way you need to show up the way you're showing up. And then you can be curious about it, investigate, like ask, like, okay, what am I feeling? Where is this coming from? Kind of like slowing the pace down a bit and then finding whatever way you need to be nourished in that moment. If you need to reach out to someone, if you need food, something to eat, something to nourish yourself, if you need to go outside or be with someone or just even not even think about it, like hanging out with someone and just saying like, I don't want to talk about this. I want to focus on like this very silly and bad movie that we're going to watch. Like, just
Yeah.
figuring out what you need in the moment and maybe creating some sort of action plan so you can pick like, okay, when I'm feeling this way, I know that I can do this or something like that.
I think that would be helpful. Yeah. So being aware, listening, and kind of like having that grid. Okay. So what are my options to do? And so does pause help with any kind of practical tools or programs to help people get through those things? Or is pause mostly like an education type of support institution?
I would say pause is really good at finding people who can help you in those moments with those needs. We know a lot of grief educators, we know a lot of death doulas, and we love being able to connect folks with the kinds of resources they're needing because it can be different from person to person. I think a lot of what we do so many different things. Really love to build connections with other death and grief workers because we need each other. We need to know each other. We need to be able to build this network, this ecosystem, so we can call on each other so that we're not just relying on one person or one entity to be able to carry out so many different tasks. What I love about Pause is that we do a lot of work with people who work in the end of life industry. We have been hosting these meetups this past year for death workers of all kinds, where we just kind of get together because you could imagine that if you're working in the end of life industry and we already live in a death phobic society, it may be hard to talk about our feelings, our experiences with just the people around us. So having those spaces where we can get together and laugh and maybe like cry together and all this stuff has been really important and nourishing because we can very easily do this work in silos, but we can't if we want it to be like sustainable. We do offer some grief support, like grief programming for the public. So something that we're doing right now through the spring is that we're doing like a creative morning peer support group. So we're just bringing folks together who are also grievers. And each month we get to do a workshop with an artist that helps us connect with our grief in a creative, artistic way. And it's so beautiful and powerful, and trying to do different things for people who work in the end of life and for just regular folks who need a space.
Yeah, and community is important, right? Community is it's so important that that's any kind of community that is, and this has been a theme over the podcast. It's like people who are going through similar experiences, people who are facing racialized oppression, people who are facing, abuse and violence or addiction should be healing with those people and going through it. And what you said about the deaf creativity class, that's awesome. I took one when my dad passed, and that was literally a game changer, I think. It was like permission, imagination. It opened up so many layers I didn't even know I had at the time.
What were the kinds of activities that you got to do?
Oh, it was an asynchronous online. I think yours pauses takes it to the next level with the in-person component. But there was other people asynchronous. They had comments. Sometimes the prompter would be like, what color is your grief right now? You walk into a store, you make eye contact. What does it look like? What feelings get ignited in you? After I took that, I kept in touch with the grief worker at the time, or death doula. I didn't even realize, that that's probably what they were, but I kept in touch for a while just because it was so appropriate and effective for me at that time. Yeah.
I'm so glad you had that space and those practices.
Yeah. The mortuary also was the one who recommended doing something like that. Cause at the time, when someone's about to pass, you're scrambling, there's a lot happening. And I was just so desperate for some kind of relief and found that. So I think what you all are doing is awesome. And it's in person, which is great.
Yeah, thank you. We do some online stuff, but we really appreciate opportunities to get together in person too.
Absolutely. And you don't know, in that grief space, sometimes you don't know what you need. And so you're kind of like open to trying stuff too. And so since we are in this holiday season and as we wrap up, so let's just say we're going to the holiday dinner, right? I'm out. It's like, Ross, okay, is he still bi? Is he gay now? What is he? What is he now? Right? What is he today?
Yeah.
Okay. What is a small practice if I have to be, or a listener has to be in those environments to stay regulated and to stay grounded, even if our families don't want to acknowledge our partner, they don't want to acknowledge our full identities, they don't want to acknowledge our pronouns. How do we stay regulated, grounded, and even like kind in those types of spaces?
Yeah.
As people of color, too, we got to add that.
Oh my gosh, there's so much like cultural context and
So much.
interacting with people and politeness and blah, blah, blah. I think what comes to this episode of The Simpsons, I don't even remember the context of the episode, but I remember that Lisa, she wrote a note and she just said like, I am Lisa Simpson. That is a practice that sometimes I do when I feel so ungrounded and maybe I don't even feel like a real person anymore. Write that down. Like, I am Stevie Luna Ibarra, and just have that, because when people are asking you all these different things about you, it's because they want to know, or they're being nosy. They're, like, who knows what their intentions are.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you're you, and you're always changing and you're always staying the same. Like, at your core, you are you. You're Ross. I'm Stevie. Listener, insert your name here. And that is just a practice that you can carry with you. Write your name down. I am blank. And you can write other stuff about you too. Like, I'm smart, I'm grounded, I'm intelligent, I'm kind, all the things that you love about yourself, because the holidays really activate all the things that maybe we don't love about ourselves or don't love about other people in our lives.
Right.
But if you can find a way to stay connected with you, like your truest self and all the things that you are, maybe that's something you can do.
Love that. I am. So powerful, right? Two small words. I am. And yes, you are. Yes. And I don't know in your background if there's a lot of joking, but for sometimes in the Black communities, there's a lot of picking and prodding, and it's all, joke. Oh, I'm joking, asking questions about the LGBT communities. Oh, I'm just curious. I'm just joking. And it's really, you know, you have to like, I am safe, I am sane, I am valid. All those little micro affirmations can really get us through that, I think.
My cultures, they joke, but they're mean. They'll like pick the things that you're most insecure about. There's a lot of criticism in my cultures among, a lot of beautiful, lovely things too. But
Yeah.
when we get together with family, it can be a little harsh. So find ways to bring that compassion, that groundedness back to you, whether it's just saying, I am, having affirmations, having a little crystal to keep you safe, or having an action plan too. Like, if this happens, then I can walk away, or I can go outside, or in I can talk to this cousin, or I can call this person, or I can just hang out with the dog. Anything like that. I think if you can do something to have a plan to remind you that there are coping skills and strategies that you can use, it might help you feel a little less trapped in these interactions or in these situations. It's important for us to feel like we have some agency and control, because we do, even if there are many places that we don't.
And so, where do you see grief work evolving? What's on the future of bereavement care, death doula, death care, end of life industry?
I think we're having a moment right now. Like, I think we're having a little renaissance, because doulas, death work is it's existed forever. We've always had rituals. We've always had practices. We've always experienced grief. Animals do it. We've always done it. And I think even though we have this term death work, we have hospice, we have, all of these things, these have always existed in different capacities. And so the fact that maybe it is coming into the mainstream, it means that there's more awareness and I think normalization. And that's very special. I think my hope is that it means we're a little less afraid of talking about it, of being with it, not only so we can bear witness to maybe other people who are nearing the end of their life or experiencing grief in some way. We can also, I think, feel a little safer within ourselves to think about it and to talk about it and to plan for it. And it becomes, I don't know, it almost like demystifies or breaks down these barriers between people, because we're reminded, like, okay, we're mortal and this is a definite end for all of us. And grief happens and death happens and joy happens, and it's not separate. These are all so interconnected and intertwined. And I think it hopefully just gives us more space to be.
And someone who says, Stevie, I can't, it's too much. The pain is so much for me to embrace. The grief is so much. And the name of this podcast is Embracing All of Me, right? And so that includes, like you said, throughout this whole conversation, is all of being. It's like whatever you need, it's getting that and honoring how you feel. What if someone comes to you and says, Stevie, it's so much to embrace whatever the circumstance is? Do you have any reflections or words for them to consider as they come to terms with their grief and loss and what they're facing?
Yeah. I think I would just say that it's normal. Whatever you're feeling right now, the enormity of the loss or the grief or the change, it makes sense. Wherever you're at right now is totally normal and natural. And I think it's a big testament to how much love and care you have. in general. It's not always going to feel like this. Grief changes all the time and it's not linear. And it's okay that this is where you're at right now. And if you're needing help, help is available. You may have to do some digging. We are happy to find resources that may resonate with you that maybe you can't find on a just quick Google search. But it's not always going to feel this way. And it's natural that you're feeling this way right now.
Thank you so much, Stevie, for joining this call and agreeing to do this. I think that the work that you are doing, the work that Pause is doing is awesome. It is really positioned to change lives for people who want to reach out and learn more about what you're doing, learn more about the resources that Pause has.
You're more than welcome to go to our website, timetopause.org. You can reach out to me. All of our contact information is on the website as well. We have different resources available on the website, like grief resources, questions about what you may be looking for. If there's something that you can't find on there, send us an email. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stevie. And thank you to everyone who's listening. This was Embracing All of Me. We'll see you next time.
Bye, y'all.
As we close today's episode, I want to return to something Stevie said that stayed with me. Grief isn't just sadness. It's where love exists. And I think that reminder right there shifts the entire landscape, because the paperwork, the planning, the conversations we want to avoid, the rituals we're unsure how to name, they're not morbid tasks. They become extensions of our love and our care and our dignity for ourselves, but also for the people who will one day have to hold our story. And so before you go, here are a few gentle questions to sit with, things that I thought about that I would like to share with you. What would it look like to set up one small thing that makes the future easier for the people who love you? One small thing. And lastly, if you imagined your celebration of life, your legacy, your wishes, what values would you want reflected back? Stevie reminded us that planning for death, planning for grief, loss, all the ways that grief and loss show up, is a way of planning for life, really. It's a way of ensuring that we can be held, witnessed, and understood, and ultimately grief is love in motion. So thank you for being here, for feeling with us, and allowing this conversation to be a soft place to land. And as a reminder, please follow the podcast, leave a comment, rate. It helps this conversation reach those who need it. Until next time, continue embracing all of you the best that you can.